Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Good to have you here. Welcome aboard. Glad that you're spending some time with me. It's a crazy day out here. We got 40-mile-an-hour winds, some snow and ice on the ground. I really wanted to go fishing today, but this wind is just too much. So I decided to bag the fishing, but I have a good video here for everybody. You know, this video is about what to throw if you're struggling to catch fish, or if you just want to catch fish. And so there's a bait that I use to do that. I use it a lot. I fish it a lot. It works very well. It's extremely effective, and it catches every species you can think of. And it's a simple thing. It's this right here, a small swim bait on a jig. Simple jig head, simple swim bait, and it catches everything. And today I'm going to talk about how I use these baits to catch multi-species and how I use them to catch fish if I'm struggling to catch them. So if you want to see some different species that I caught in the past year on these swim baits, take a look at this. So when we talk about this, we're going to talk about a couple of different baits that I like that will work for you as well. A couple of different presentations for the bait, which is the jig. I have a couple of different ways I like to rig this bait. We'll talk about the rods and reels and the line that we use as well. and all the different fish species that this thing catches too. So we're talking, when you want to catch fish, generally you're thinking about using smaller baits, downsizing to some degree. And so this one is a 3.3 inch Kitech swing impact fat. In fact, it's what I was going to throw today. One of the baits I wanted to throw today because I like this size this time of year in the winter when the water's cold. I like to throw white. It's a great bait. It catches stripers, it catches smallmouth and largemouth bass. And this is one of the things I would have thrown today if I would have gone out there. The swing impact fat is one of the baits that I like to throw, and it's one of the ones that I would recommend that you try. It's the first one that I think I would try if I'm trying to catch some fish. It comes in a number of different sizes. This is a 2.8 incher here, 3.3 incher, and those are typically the sizes that I like to use. If I'm going for a little bit bigger fish, or if I'm in a system that has larger fish, I'll go up to the 3.8 inch. But 2.8, 3.3, and 3.8 inch, maybe up to 4 inches, depending on whose company's bait you're using. That's the sizes of bait that I'll use. And if I really just want to catch fish, the smaller you go, the more you're likely to get bit by different species, especially. So the swing impact fat is one of the baits that I like. Another one that I'll fish quite a bit, especially if I need something a little more subtle, is another Kitech bait. It's called the Easy Shiner. Now the Easy Shiner, let me pull this out, has a much smaller profile. This is a 3-inch bait, but much smaller than this 3.3 and thinner than the swing impact fat. It has just a smaller tail, and so it doesn't have as large of a presence in the water. There's another bait that I like that I think is pretty much the same as the Easy Shiner, and it's the Megabass Hazadong Shad, and I'll show that to you here along with the Easy Shiner. These are about the same size. Both are 3-inch baits. The Easy Shiner just has a little bit more of an elongated tail, but I prefer to fish the Hazadong Shad because of the eyes. I really, really like those eyeballs in the Hazadong Shad. So when I'm fishing a small bait, I'll use the Hazadong Shad a lot. But this Easy Shiner is just as good. So whatever one you have is the one you should throw because they'll work. And then one other bait that I like that's somewhere in between that I would recommend is this bait. This is the Reaction Innovations Little Dipper. It's got a bit of a different presence. It's a different shape. It doesn't have the wide wag tail. This tail wags like crazy on the swing impact fat. It's a little more subtle than that, but it has a little more bulk than the Easy Shiner and the Megabass Hazadong Shad. So this is a nice in-between bait that I like to throw. Now the key to throwing these baits is to have the right jig head for it. If I'm trying to get down fairly deep on a smaller bait like this 3.3, I'll use a 1/4 ounce. This is a Kitech ball head jig, and that is a 1/4 ounce weight. It is tungsten, so it's not cheap, but it's a very good bait, a very good jig. It lets you feel the bottom real well, and it gets the bait down there nicely. Now I'll use different size depending on how deep I'm fishing. The nice thing about these baits is you can fish them in 50, 60, 70 feet of water, or you can fish them in 3 feet of water. And the size of the jig will dictate how deep you want to go. But they'll work in all those different depths of water column. It's amazing how versatile this bait is, and this is one of the reasons why you should be throwing it. If you're not sure what to throw, if you're on a new lake and you have decently clear water and you're not sure what to throw, this is a great bait to start out with, just to see how active the fish are. I'll do that with this bait quite a bit too, just to see in general, all of the fish, are they active or not? Because if the bluegills and crappie are active, the bass probably are too. So it's always good to figure out, are they willing to chase? How are they biting the bait? Are they nipping the tail, or are they taking it fully? This is a great bait to determine those things before you throw a different or maybe a more aggressive bait for the fish. The nice thing about these Kitech jig hooks is these are all 1/4 ounce here, and this one too, but they're actually 3 different sizes. There's a 1/0, a 2/0, and a 3/0. So you can size them to the bait accordingly. So you might want to use a smaller one, for example, on this smaller 2.8 bait. So you just pick that. You want to pick the weight that you want, but you also want to be aware of how long the hook is. That's how long the shank is. That's 1/0, 2/0, 3/0. 3/0's bigger than 2, 2 is bigger than 1. So if you're using something small, you're going to want to go smaller with that hook shank. If you're using a longer swim bait, then you're going to want to use something with like a 3/0, something bigger. The other jig heads that I like to use are these. These are made by Dirty Jigs. This is a guppy head. You can see here's the same weight, same size head, 2 very different size hooks. I think this is 3/0, this is probably 1/0. Again, I could use these depending on the size of the bait and how deep I want to get them. This head, I believe, is a 3/8 ounce head, so I can cast that very far. So that's another head that I'll use. The other head that I like to use is called a tush, which is the ultimate swim bait head, I believe is what that stands for. And so with the tush, it's different. It doesn't have the weight on the head of the jig. The weight is on the body of the hook. So what you do is you wet this. Don't put it in your mouth because it's lead. You don't want to get lead poisoning. I see so many people do that. It's not a good idea to do. Just put it in a little cup of water or dip it in the lake. And then you just insert it into the bait so that it would come out looking like this. And now you get a different kind of fall because of that. The bait will fall a little bit more horizontally, and it tracks horizontally in the water much nicer too. So if you're really trying to get that horizontal tracking, then the tush is a good option to use. I like these 3. These are the 3 jig heads that I use almost exclusively. So when I'm throwing something that is a 1/4 ounce or less, I like to use, and this is a nice thing about this. This bait works equally well on a spinning rod as it does on a bait caster. So if you prefer spinning outfits, then a spinning rod is the thing to use. It works just as well as a bait cast. I just tend to like the bait finesse. So in case you want to know what I throw it on, I like to throw it on a bait finesse system. And so this is a Cashin bait finesse rod. It's a 6'10" fast, medium light bait finesse rod. It's perfect for setting the hook on these swim baits. And then I have a Shimano Curado bait finesse reel, and I can send these baits out a real long way. And the reason why I prefer bait cast over spinning is because I struggle with carpal tunnel, and the way I have to hold a spinning rod makes my wrist numb in a hurry. And so the bait caster is a lot more comfortable for me. That's number 1. Number 2 is I prefer throwing a bait caster. That's what I learned on. I'm more comfortable throwing it. I have more accuracy throwing it. And with bait finesse now, I can throw it as far as you could throw it on a spinning rod. So I don't lose distance, and I have the things that I like from a bait finesse point of view. And the other thing I like is that I feel that I can feel the bite a little bit better on this style rod than on a spinning rod. If I'm fishing a heavier bait, say something with 3/8 ounce head, then I go to a heavier rod. I like this is my swim bait rod. It's a medium heavy rod, but it's actually a very light medium heavy rod. It's more of a medium rod, but it's a bigger rod. It's a 7-foot rod, and I can cast that bait out far, and that way I have a rod that's paired to the bigger bait. It's easier to get larger fish in that way with the heavier action rod. If I'm throwing the bait finesse, I'm throwing lighter baits, lighter jigs, smaller lures, then I will typically use 10-pound test braided line. I like Power Pro and I like Spider Wire Stealth. And then I'll use a fluorocarbon leader of 8-pound test, and that's generally Seagar Invisex. Sometimes I'll go down to 6-pound test if I want to get that bait down real deep, or if I feel the fish are real finicky. But usually it's 8-pound fluorocarbon finesse. And so what I'll do with that is I'll have about 2 rod lengths of that leader. That way, if I need to cut a bait off or if I get hung, I don't have to retie another leader. I have plenty of length where I can just cut off and retie another bait on it. It makes it nice and it works well for me. If I'm fishing the heavier stuff, if I'm using a 3/8 ounce on this heavier rod, then you may want to go to a heavier spinning outfit as well. And for that, I use 20-pound braid. Again, Power Pro or Spider Wire Stealth, and I use anywhere from 12 to 15-pound fluorocarbon. Usually 15-pound fluorocarbon on the heavier jig head and larger size baits. And again, that's Invisex from Seagar, just 15-pound test. So those are the lines and the rods and the reels that I prefer. Again, you don't have to use a bait caster. Spinning rod will work just fine for all of these presentations. You'll be able to cast the bait very far. It's really your preference and your choice. But there is one thing you should be aware of, and that is how the fish bite this bait. They tend to come up from behind and follow the bait before they eat it. It's rare when you get one hitting it at the head of the bait. It's usually they come up and they overwhelm the bait from the back. And so what ends up happening is when you're reeling in, and usually and I'm going to go over the 3 basic retrieves that I really like the best with this next. But when you're retrieving this in and you're turning your reel handle, you might feel a nip or a couple of bumps, especially when you're catching multi-species, perch, crappies, and fish with smaller mouths. But this happens with largemouth and smallmouth as well. They'll kind of bump the back of it. They don't quite get the whole thing sometimes. And so you don't want to, when you feel a little tick, you don't want to pull. You don't want to set the hook. You'll pull the bait right away from them, and they may come back or they may not. It may turn them off and they may just veer off. Just keep reeling. Just keep that reeling going the same pace, and then you'll start to feel a little more weight. You'll start to feel this fish adding its own weight to your bait. You might even want to speed up just a little bit, and if you start to feel that heaviness, then all you do is lean back into them. You don't have to. This is not the kind of bait where you want to be setting the hook like you're fishing a jig and pig or something like that. Just lean back, side sweeping the rod. These hooks on these jig heads are not thick. They'll go and penetrate into the fish very well and very easily, and so that leaning into them is the best way to hook them up. And I've learned this the hard way. So just a piece of advice for anyone who may be new to this style of fishing. Don't set the hook hard. You're just gonna either pull it out of their mouth or rip the bait out of their mouth. Much better to just start to feel for that weight. As it gets to heavy, you just lean back, set the hook, and you have the fish. You can fight the fish back to the boat. All right, let's talk about the 3 retrieves that I like best. So when I'm fishing these baits, I usually do the same thing every time out, unless I notice something about how the fish are positioned in the water. And usually I will assume that they're going to be near the bottom. And so with today's electronics, you can find that out a lot more quickly, especially if you have forward-facing sonar and you see them up. Then you can save yourself some time and maybe not do that. But usually I start on the bottom. So what that means is I'll throw the bait out as far as I can throw it, and then I will just follow it down to the bottom. I'll let it go down. Some people like to feed the bait line so that it goes straight down far away, and I'll do that now and then, but sometimes I don't. I'm always amazed at how many fishermen don't do what I'm going to suggest that you do, but I can tell you it works really well, and you really don't lose a lot of distance. And that is, you just throw it out there. When it hits the water, you engage your reel and just hold. So what's going to happen when you do that is instead of you feeding line and the bait going this way, the bait's going to kind of swim down. It's not going to go real far, but it's still going to swim down a little bit more on an angle than it would if you were feeding it line. I do that more often than not. I probably fish it that way 90% of the time because I get a lot of bites when it's doing that. I think you can get bites when it's swimming down too as well, but if you're feeding it line, you're not going to feel those bites so easily. And I don't think it looks as natural as if it's just swimming down this way. So I'll let it swim down and I'll put my finger on the line like this. See how my finger is on this line? That's how I'm holding it. I've engaged the reel. And then if I feel something, I can know if there's something trying to eat it on the way down. When they do eat it on the way down, they usually eat it very well. They usually just suck the bait right in, and you just set the hook and get them. So we cast it out there. Once the bait gets to the bottom, I might let it sit there for a second or two in case fish want to come over. If fish are curious, they saw it land, maybe they're coming over to the bait. Then I just simply engage the reel and start to fish it very slowly. Usually this is a slow retrieve. What I've learned, and by the way, this bait works spring, summer, fall, winter. It works every part of the year, but it tends to be a slow-moving bait bite better than a fast-moving. There's better options if you're going to fish, if you need to fish something fast and are looking for a reaction strike. So usually it's a very slow retrieve, slow and methodical, and I want to keep it near the bottom. I don't want to get it too far up, maybe a foot and a half from the bottom, and every now and then if I think that I'm too far, I'll just stop and check for the bottom and again let it go back down, and then again just start reeling again. But I want to keep it along the bottom, and again I'm feeling for that bite, I'm feeling for that fish to come up, waiting for that weight, and then setting the hook. That's my first way of fishing. If I don't catch anything that way after I've done that for a while, I'll start fishing it in the middle of the water column. So what I'll do then is I'll throw it out and I'll just count it down. Let's say I'm fishing 20 feet of water, I'll count it down to a count of 10. That'll get me somewhere between 8 and 12 feet, depending on the size of the jig, and you can kind of count it, see for yourself how much that would be. And now I'm reeling it along in the mid column of the water, say 10 feet if it's 20 feet deep. That way, if there's fish suspended out there, I'm more likely to have them commit to it. And sometimes that's what you have to do. Sometimes they're up higher in the water column and they don't want to eat it near the bottom. Again, though, now and then, if I'm doing that, I'm really slow. Sometimes I like to stop. So usually I'll do a bunch of casts where I just reel it straight back. But if I'm not getting any activity like that, I will reel it for a bit and then I'll stop and just kill it. Just kill the retrieve and just let it go down a little bit, and then I'll start again. Sometimes that turns them on when you kill it, and then when you start again, they're on it right away. So it's worth trying that. And today, now, if you have forward-facing sonar and you can track your bait, you can see where the fish are and where your bait is in relation to it, and then you can experiment how do they want that. There is one other way that I don't fish it as often, but it can be dynamite sometimes, especially for smallmouth bass. I don't know why, but I've caught more smallmouths this way than anything else. And that is to just fish it as a jig. So what I mean by that is you throw it out there, you let it go to the bottom, you lift it up, the bait comes up off the bottom, and then you just let it go back down. And I'll let it go back down on a taut line. I want to feel that bite. So what's happening there is it's going down, I lift it up, and then I just let it go back down. I'll reel up the slack, but it's still a taut line as it's going down. I want the bait to swim down, but I also want to feel for the bite. And sometimes that jigging technique, and the other thing I've caught on that is hybrid stripers seem to like that quite a bit as well. So those two fish especially, hybrids and smallmouth bass, sometimes really prefer the jigging method where you're just lifting the bait up and down. Just lift it up, let it drop back down, all the way back, and then retrieve it back to the boat, and you're good to go. Well, that's it. That's the video. If you want to catch fish and you just want to go out there and you don't care what species or anything like that, you just want to catch some fish, this thing gets everything. White perch, yellow perch, walleye, smallmouth, largemouth, crappie, rock bass, bluegills, catfish, stripers, hybrid stripers, you name it, this thing will catch it. And so that's what makes it a lot of fun to fish. So if you like the video, if you like what I'm doing, you know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hype the video. And if you want to see a video where I compare the best of these swim baits, where I look at 10 or more of these swim baits and compare them underwater, take a look at this one right here. Until next time, be safe out there. Hope to see you on the water. And as always, may God bless your fishing endeavors.